Hello.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
I liked reading about your son in the paper. I meant to mention that last week.
Oh, thank you. He's been doing really well and college is on to college soon, hopefully.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, he went to Bentley yesterday to tour that and last week to Bryant. And so he's gonna run in one of those two schools. I know that,
Great.
but
And those are close, right? Those are both.
yeah, the Bryant's like near in Rhode Island, like an hour and a
Okay.
half away, and the other one's in Waltham.
Uh-huh.
And Merrimack is another one that the track coach is looking to reel him in.
That's great.
But it needs to be about the education, not the running. He's not gonna be a professional runner.
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
I guess if
think
you're a marathoner.
yeah, I think it's great. I feel like it can open doors. Like,
Right.
yeah. So, hi, Richard. Hi, Noel.
Hello, hello.
Glad you're here. Hi, Liam. I think that's everybody. Hi, Dan. Hi, Adrian, Dave. Is that I think that's everybody. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Adrian. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yay. I'm just grateful that my technology worked. I was ready sitting here at 5:15, like it's going to work. It's going to be okay. So grateful for that. And it looks like we can just go ahead and get started. So my name is Heidi Wakeman, and welcome to the Open Space and Recreation Committee meeting on Wednesday, December 8th, 2021. Consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. In the event that a live transmission proves unworkable for any reason, an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the meeting will be made available on the city's website as soon as possible. Okay, and I'd like to just start with a roll call, please. And you can, I'll say your name and here.
Morris.
Hi,
Yeah.
Member Morris. Yep, Dave Sargent,
Here.
Mark Poulin,
Present.
Noel Mann,
Present.
Richard Quaitman,
Here.
and Liam Anastasia Murphy.
Here.
And also in attendance is Adrian Lennon
Hello.
and Chairperson Heidi Wakeman. So tonight, the purpose of tonight's meeting is predominantly to continue discussion and revision of the draft of the open space and recreation plan. I do want to acknowledge members of the public that are here. And if at this time they have comments, I am limiting it to 3 minutes per person. So if I can have a timer, do that. But if there's somebody that would like to make a comment here, you can raise your hand to speak and we can we can unmute you and make you a participant so that you can speak. So.
Did you want me to time it?
Thank you, Liam. That would be great. So I see 5 attendees, and if anybody would like to say anything. Okay, and please know that you are welcome here. This is a public meeting, and that your presence here is appreciated. So thank you for participating. Adrian, I'll say I hope that you received some feedback from the panelists or from the members. Do you want to start?
Yes, absolutely. I did. And thank you. I received comments back from Liam, Mark, Dan, Heidi, Noelle, and Greg and Gemma. So almost everyone in the group had an opportunity to review this and set their red lines. I have combined almost all of them except for Mark. I'm just adding yours right now to the document as track changes so we can talk through them. The good thing is I think everybody kind of came back with the same comments. And some of it has to do with wordsmithing, which I'm totally happy to walk through right now. And then others, we have, some additional ideas that we need to try to incorporate. So I'm going to share my screen.
Can I just say that I didn't ever receive anything to review?
Sure. Yeah.
Just getting lost in the mail. So reserve my right to comment.
Of course. And this is a work in progress. So we are ongoing with it. And so I think what we can do first is walk through and talk about the track changes that were proposed and try to come to a consensus about either language or intent. And then I want to go back through the goals, take a look at them as action items, sort of the higher level action items, and think about timelines and how we would add them into the timeline for the section 9 portion of the plan. So, okay, without further ado, here. Can everybody see okay?
Yes.
Okay, I can make it a little bigger too. How's that? Full screen?
That's okay with me.
Okay. So I know Heidi read this entire thing end to end at the last meeting, so we'll try to skip that, but I do want to just talk about the points where I got significant, feedback, and a lot of them are around kind of the same sentences or phrasing. And the first of those are under definition. We did talk about the definition we were going to use for open space and recreation land. The passive recreation sentence, these users are walking, hiking, fishing, and paddling, got a lot of feedback. So among the track changes were users can be probably doing such activities as walking, hiking, fishing, paddling. There was a request to include mountain biking, climbing, and bouldering. And then, a change saying uses of these spaces include but are not limited to walking, hiking, biking, fishing, climbing, and paddling. So I'm open to the discussion here about how we would like to change it, but let's come to a sentence that works. Heidi, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk through that.
Okay. So I'm looking at the feedback, and so anybody, let's see. I mean, I know what I wrote. I know what my thing was. Uses of these spaces could, I like the include but are not limited to walking, hiking, biking, fishing, climbing, paddling. Do we need to be specific about mountain biking, climbing, bouldering? What do folks think? Or is biking enough?
I feel like biking's enough. I feel
Okay,
like you can just do biking and then maybe climbing and bouldering, or climbing, bouldering, and paddling, however you want to do that. To like finish that off, but
I think,
Okay.
but not limiting, covers a lot.
yeah. I think that's important. That's important to me. I just like it includes but is not limited to, because there could be a sport or something that comes up that people say, oh, I'm gonna do that. So these
Particularly
uses
the next
include,
7
but
years, right?
say it again. I cut you off.
Particularly in the next 7 years, we don't know what's going to come down.
Exactly.
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I think the key is the difference between active recreation and passive recreation, just lack of equipment and upkeep. It's really how I see the difference between those two things.
Right, okay, so walking, hiking, biking, climbing, fishing and paddling. How's that sound?
That's a-
That's 6 activities.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, moving on. I think I wrote that comment, cemeteries to be included. Is that something, do we have cemeteries as part of this, or is that not part of, or is that part of this land?
Yes, cemeteries are included in the open space and recreation land inventory. And we can talk about them as passive recreation points. So I can certainly write trails, vista points, or cemeteries, trails, vista points, and forests. Obviously, the inhabitants and most populous group of cemeteries are not necessarily recreating there. So the discussion around cemeteries has a lot more to do with how we manage it for, anybody who may be walking or maybe dog walking or something like that. Sometimes people ride bikes through the spaces. But the management of cemeteries, even though it is included in the open space, a lot of it is not going to change. It's very much, most of the cemeteries are actually closed. There's only one open cemetery right now in the city of Gloucester. And so we do need to make sure we identify them in the open space plan, and we can have a discussion about them, but I don't necessarily know if we want to promote recreation in cemeteries.
Okay. What cemetery, I didn't know, when you say they're all closed, what do you mean? Do you mean for walking in or for?
No, there's only one cemetery that's owned by the city of Gloucester right now where you can buy a plot.
I see.
In terms
Okay.
of management decisions, and if you'd be clearing new spaces or trying to expand or putting in roadways or anything like that, any kind of capital investments, they're almost all full.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right. There is a place that I need to include the requests of the DPW facilities to reference cemeteries in their management, because of course they have their own board and we want to make sure we are considering them.
Yeah.
So this is I'm gonna call this like unresolved here, that I need to give it a home a little bit lower, I think, in the outline.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, recreation land is used for active recreation. This comment goes with that, the bicycling, running, walking, and other forms of.
Yeah,
Oh.
so, and maybe Dan can speak to this a little bit. He had kind of included as a whole separate section, a couple like that, 2 paragraphs later, where I'm saying open space land is for passive recreation and recreation land is used for active recreation. Just the terms of definitions for this goals and action items, section where we're trying to separate the two. There are places where they typically overlap. In those cases, a property of interest is considered as a both and instead of an either or, which is to say that I put it in both categories. If it's used for both passive and active recreation, as we saw when I went through this, goal 1 is focused on, actually doing the conservation work, which is deed and title research and mostly title attorney work and managing the inventory on the GIS system. And goal 2 has to do with stewardship, which is really about community outreach, how the open space committee and the city as a whole relate to nonprofit groups, user groups, other landholder agencies, whether they be state and federal, or if they're nonprofit agencies, to encourage stewardship and support in managing those spaces. That's really the scope of goal number 2. Goal number 3 has to do with the recreation facilities and associated programming. So that's where we've gone to say, this is where we're talking about passive recreation areas. Maintain, enhance, and expand. Oh no, I'm sorry, go the opposite. Goal number 3 is fields, courts, landings, parks, and other facilities. So that's where we're talking about how we're going to manage all the facilities that exist. Cemeteries goes in here, even though it's not a recreation place. It does have a little bit of a maintenance burden, and maybe the feedback from DPW will be to put it in passive. I'm not quite sure yet. But goal 3 was really about the active. And goal 4 is about the passive, right? And then goal 5, of course, is the climate change resiliency piece, which has a lot to do with policy work and plans.
So you just went through all that. And is that in response to Dan's comment about bicycling, running, and walking?
Yeah,
So
what I'm saying here is that was the purpose of making these definitions, was to say we have passive recreation areas, we have active recreation areas. We're going to talk about the two of them separately in this goals and action items document. However, in a place where they may overlap, where a passive recreation area may also be an active recreation area, we are going to consider it to be part of both. We are not going to assign it to one category and not the other. So any site is not mutually exclusive if it has both uses.
And
Right.
something like bike lanes feels like it's
Neither.
not really either. It's a bike lane is part of car infrastructure or a street. So like a street isn't open space and a street isn't recreation land. So I see that there's places where uses regularly overlap, but it feels like Dan's comment is about people recreating or like exercising in the place that is not one nor the other instead of both and.
Right. And so that I think is the reason why Dan added this here where he did. Are we right?
Okay. So would it go right there? I guess that's what I'm saying. Would it go at that place? Like, is that what you're suggesting, Dan? Is that it would go right after this paragraph, or this not paragraph, but like within the document, it would go there?
Yeah, I mean, so we're looking at one section and not the complete document. Early in the document, I would hope that when we are defining the scope of what this document is addressing, and I believe we do, we have these definitions there as well. And I would hope that we would also have, in addition to open space, land and recreation land, and then those that go with both, we would have recreational activities that don't go on either. And that would be the byways, roads, sidewalks and that sort of thing. And so if anywhere in the document that we are describing the scope that this committee and this planner are addressing, I would hope that we would have some statement to that effect.
That
Um,
sounds good.
This is Dave. I'm suggesting that we have including but not limited to.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
I'm happy to add this right in if the group feels comfortable with that.
I feel comfortable with it. I think it's well written and I think it's clear and
Right. and,
Concur.
I think it was goal 4 actually picks this up and it's talking about specific recommendations that are not necessarily associated with recreation land or passive land or I'm sorry, or open space land or recreation land.
Okay. So this came in from Noel. Continue to refine and improve open space inventory by identifying and reconciling the following parcel types. Unbuilt without access. Is that, Noel, is that a part of the definition of a land with low value? Do you know?
I'm not sure. It's not, in my mind, it's just a category for us to aim to preserve in many cases.
Okay, unbuilt land without frontage.
You could say that.
Okay. I know that land of low value is a it's an assessor's category.
Is it?
Yeah, and I'm fairly confident it pretty much only covers marshlands and floodways in some cases and flats. That's what is, it's like inside a resource area is
Right.
land of low value. So you can't develop it, basically.
I wouldn't say without frontage, because frontage assumes for development purposes along a public roadway. You could have properties that don't have, they're accessible through, say, public land. So you go into Dogtown and you have undeveloped private land that's an inholding. So you're right, technically it doesn't have public frontage, so it can't be built upon, but I think access without access or even public access, I don't know.
Further, I attended an assessors meeting some time ago and was told in order to get some of the vacant property, unknown property in near Dogtown in North Gloucester Woods into conservation, it could be considered through the land court as land of low value.
Okay, yeah, I'm, all right. So can I explore that a little bit more with the assessor's office? To be sure
Yes.
that the definition of that term? Because I thought it was only lands with resource area that were, coastal resource areas essentially.
Well, it's lack of access. There's no infrastructure.
Right. Okay. So let me try to find out a little bit more about how that the DOR defines land of low value.
Good.
Okay. Okay. So here we go. So I'm going to read through 3 again, and we'll talk about how we can wordsmith it a little. I'm sorry, C, focus land conservation efforts in areas identified as containing valuable natural resources, including priority wildlife habitat, watershed lands that supply Gloucester's drinking water, areas with large contiguous blocks of undeveloped open space, and critical areas of environmental and climate resiliency concern. Transfer the following parcels into permanent protection via conservation restriction. 1, Dogtown Parcel Cluster and North Gloucester Woods. 2, city beaches and adjacent marshlands. And 3, city parks and active recreation areas. And so the comment here was to add underserved areas, although Yeah, okay. Add underserved areas and give special consideration to natural resources. So we can add in 4 here, so that I think I understand the idea about prioritizing areas that are underserved with underserved for open space. But my question is, are we talking about trying to prioritize parcels that maybe don't exist yet for conservation, or to conserve what pre-exists and maybe isn't permanently protected in underserved areas?
This is Dave. I think the target of natural resources is not necessarily focused, and I think it changes as time goes along. And I think it's very good to include that. And I, personally believe that we need to pay homage to underserved areas. So it wouldn't hurt to include that, particularly in as much as the underserved areas are in Inner Gloucester are going to be impacted by global climate change due to sea level rise.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is absolutely true. I'm trying to think about how to use. So when I drafted this, what I was thinking of were actual parcel clusters, actual places where we would be saying, okay, number 1, Dogtown Parcel Cluster, North Gloucester Woods. We're going to define what that parcel cluster is by way of the Dogtown Preservation Commission. And then we're going to focus our land conservation efforts to transfer those parcels into permanent protection via conservation restriction. And then the same goes for city beaches are pretty well-defined lots. We know exactly what they are. They're not subdivided. They're not protected, and neither are the adjacent marshlands that maybe the city owns, and in some cases that they're owned privately or through nonprofit. And then city parks and active recreation areas, we know where our fields are. So I want to specifically say these are the parcels we are going to move into conservation. And so if we're going to focus on trying to move some parcels into conservation into what we define potentially as maybe the EJ overlay district, those are going to be the downtown parks, right?
Mhm.
Which we've incorporated here in city parks. And, what do you think? Points of access to the water? Something like that.
Well, again, I'm bringing up the area that Gloucester has, adjacent to the high school going past Division of Marine Fisheries, past the Mac Bell property that the Gloucester owns. That really, we have not focused in or used. And in the title, it says that people have the recreational ability to use that for picnicking, water access, as well as enjoyment. And we really haven't taken advantage of that.
Okay. So how about if we say, can we say something that maybe points it towards the Harbor Walk?
Well, that's really not part of the Harbor Walk.
Is that property part of the Harbor Walk? Is that like the end of it?
No, that's not part of the Harbor Walk.
Okay, because I know it goes by the high school, but then it ends somewhere. It must end at Dunfudgeon, right?
Harbor Walk does not go by the high school.
It is actually part of where the flood wall is permitted. Yeah, so it ends.
I'm not sure how the Harbor Walk connected by the tavern, but
Yeah, I know. We go around that a lot, trying to figure that out. We need an easement, but it does, the way it was mapped, it does go as far as Dunfudgeon. And then I thought it went past that. Like I thought that there was an agreement with the Division of Marine Fisheries, so that people that own that property is actually not as privately held.
it's the Division of Marine Fisheries. This goes back to about 1950, where the city farm was deeded to Mighty Mac as well as to the high school. And so that area was preserved for, forever for public use, as well as the pier that's out there. And, we really haven't taken advantage of that. And if you wish, I can forward you the, the deeds to that property.
Okay.
Perhaps we should include landings.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Where am I going? I don't know a whole lot about trying to move rights of way into conservation.
That's deed restrictions.
Right. Dave, where am I?
Dunfudgeon?
Yeah, well, what parcel are you speaking of specifically?
Dave?
Oh, okay. You would be going north.
There's a little bit of a delay when I run all of this video at once. Okay, go ahead. Up here? That's the division.
Right, so there would be a 15-foot right-of-way through this parcel all the way to the Mass Gas parcel, which is this elongated parcel there that you're being. So where you see the bump out, that's the pier, and then along that there's also a 15-foot right-of-way all the way along, according to the deeds. And there's also the interesting addendum that if the landowner is amenable to it, that other areas of that parcel could be used for recreational and passive activities.
Interesting. Okay.
And I can forward that along if anybody's interested.
Sure. So how can we talk about that as a priority to conserve?
Well, what we looked at was underserved areas, and that's an underserved area, as I believe.
Okay. I have to find out more about if that's part of the Harbor Walk, and yes, definitely send that to me. This is Mac Groves. Yeah. And that's Fish and Wildlife. Okay, so I'm gonna make a note here about public easement potentially over private land. North Fish and Wildlife.
So does this go here, Adrian, or somewhere else? Because this description is really, it's talking about larger pieces of, priority wildlife habitat, et cetera. This is really, the easements is really pure passive recreation, it would seem, whereas this is for natural resources protection. if I'm reading it correctly.
I mean, it's up to you. I'll tell you, I mean, I can tell you when I look at this, Dogtown Parcel Cluster, North Gloucester Woods, city beaches, adjacent marshland, city parks and active recreation areas. We're talking like probably 200 parcels to go through title research on and move into conservation. I think that'll take 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
But I definitely do read the point about trying to think about other, if city parks and active recreation areas and beaches and marshlands do not capture the downtown open spaces, which I'll have to probably go back and maybe we can look at that map and try to decide if we feel like it does. Here, hold on. This will take me a minute to pull up. So discuss amongst yourselves.
Well, I guess for me, when I look at C, I just see focused land conservation efforts, like conserving land that we know is doing these things. So 1, 2, and 3, Dogtown Parcel Cluster, city beaches, city parks. What I see bullet point C or topic C is conserve and protect those 3 areas. Those are our priorities. And so to Richard's point, like, is this going to come up somewhere else in the plan or the goals and objectives? Which I feel like, Dave, your point is just make sure that that's in this document, but you're being very specific with the place that we should conserve being this place here we're looking at on the map, north of Dunfudgeon, as a landing. Like, is it the landing itself or just the land? Because these are very specific points. There are places, meaning city beaches, city parks. So I feel like is what we're doing, is this conversation in the right bullet point, or will it come up somewhere differently? That, because if this is about conserving land, that's what you're asking for.
Well, I
Correct?
think you have a good point, Heidi.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it belongs in this section. I was referencing, the comments, that were on the right side of the screen.
Okay.
It may not be in this particular section of the plan, but I just want to make sure that this isn't overlooked, because
Yeah.
I think this really could open up some opportunities to the city as well as to those in the underserved community.
Yeah. What map is this?
This is part of the final map set.
And so that red that's what we were just talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, federally owned.
Okay. Got it. Oh, yeah. Okay. And that's Fish and Wildlife.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Well, then it sounds to me like, if I am understanding what Dave just reiterated, is just the importance of including this in our goals and objectives, perhaps not under C, goal 1.
okay.
Goal 1C.
So let's keep it in mind.
Okay.
All right. So moving on.
Yep.
Promote and support the acquisition and permanent protection via conservation restriction of the following parcel types: land for conservation purposes, wildlife habitat, water supply protection, land for parks and facilities in areas that lack parkland. That I think that falls into our downtown area. Land and easement right-of-way access to the Commonwealth, tidelands, public landings, and something, this comes from Noel, having to do with adding flooding with reference to the Greenbelt appendix maps. and lands for protection of areas from storm surge and sea level rise. So Noel, do you want to comment?
No,
Okay,
I mean,
Do you
just
think-
be more, it's just a general principle that I think we ought to be pursuing.
okay, so but do you think that number 4, lands for protection of areas from storm surge and sea level rise covers that?
I'm not sure what it means. I mean, obviously, where sea level rise and storm surge are like to be a problem, it's almost all in private ownership. I,
So do you want me to add flooding here? From flooding, storm surge? And
but
sea level-
how are you going to protect the coastal privately owned properties?
Well,
By saving land? I mean, there's just no place to put them.
you're not wrong about that. That is true. But the idea is promote and support the acquisition and permanent protection.
Yes,
So that when the opportunity arises, we want to be able to encourage that act, right?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll put it in there. And then I think that allows for inland aerial flooding issues,
Mhm.
which is definitely a matter separate from and equal to storm surge and sea level rise.
Mhm.
Right. Okay. Number 2, improve stewardship and management of Gloucester's open space and conservation lands, trails, forests, and vista points. This is the, I must have numbered these wrong, and I'm sorry about that, but this is not a final copy. So sometimes it's alpha and then numbers, sometimes it's numbers and numbers, and I promise I'll make it better. But one of the comments back here was a lot of respondents to the survey mentioned limited trash and bathroom access. Perhaps a line in here about identifying areas with greatest need and developing a plan to get better access to bathrooms and trash. So that I think was Liam. And Liam, I wonder if you think that that's something that we should incorporate in C, develop and implement land management plans, to guide production and management of natural resources and address issues such as invasive species, overuse, inappropriate use, and climate change. And also Noel commented to simplify and edit for clarity. I'm all for that. I think that there's a lot of language in here that maybe can be broken up even a little bit more. And so I want to think about where we can add a discussion about bathrooms and trash.
Yeah, that was basically, I wanted to get it into more. So yeah, wherever you think is the most appropriate or fits in best with this, these goals, I think that would be great.
Would that go into the funding sources for maintenance tasks? That seems to make sense.
Well, the discussion about funding sources is not what we're funding, but I do think we have to find, so this would be the baseline set of conditions, right? And on which, on a property in which the goals of the land management plans are based, generate a standard inventory or report to use in evaluating these properties. And then or in number 2, define current and intended uses, including public access restrictions or easements and regulatory requirements. But I think under number 1 here, we can say, as part of the inventory, identify parcels that need a higher level of service, including bathrooms and trash. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I do too.
I'm sorry if I missed
As long as you say
something.
trash collection,
Yeah,
we don't want to encourage trash.
yeah, Dan.
Would this also be a place to, and perhaps it's mentioned and I'm just not seeing it, accessibility?
Yeah, that's a very good point. They're important use in evaluating properties. Okay, how about let's do it this way. Evaluating properties. Let's see. For characteristics. Yay. It's not a great speller, just so I know. Including ADA accessibility, bathroom. And trash pickup.
I'm wondering why you need 4 characteristics.
Well, I don't want to. So when I was thinking about this, so the baseline set of conditions that exist on property, which the goals of land management plans are based. So when we're talking about a standard inventory or report to use in evaluating properties, that inventory is going to include, the natural resource areas that are on site. For example, are there upland resource areas? What's the quality of the woodland? What is the, is there a pond? Are there vernal pools? Are there trails around it? Are there not? Are there meadows that need to be mowed, or are they not? Because I kind of, when I went in for land management plan, I tried to pick a beach, a city park, a public landing, a trail system, a large comprehension, and these 2 large comprehensive recreation areas, right? So when you're doing a baseline inventory of Good Harbor Beach, it's going to look different, obviously, from your baseline inventory of Corliss Landing. But at Good Harbor Beach, you want to be able to say there's a salt marsh, there's a river, there's a dune system, there are walking paths, there are facilities, all these things. But it's not only what is the infrastructure there, it's also what are the resources on the ground that we may want to prioritize protecting. So I don't want to limit us to only talking in an inventory and report on whether or not it's ADA accessible bathroom facilities or trash pickup.
It's kind of like you're suggesting that ADA accessibility may take a backseat to characteristics.
Or characteristics including. Can you say that another way, Dave?
So I'm wondering if 4 characteristics really should be there. If the property is evaluated, including, that way, it's just
okay.
An even playing field.
Okay. Works for me. Okay. So a couple of things in 3, we have maintain, enhance, expand clusters, recreation facilities, and associated programming. The overall discussion here has to do with insert the idea of a Parks and Recreation Committee or person in this section above 2 or above in goal 2.
Yeah, I didn't know if it belonged, when I wrote that comment, I didn't know if it belonged in this right there in section 5 there.
Right over here.
Yeah. If it belonged there, it was more pertinent in goal 3 somewhere, but I just wanted to bring it.
Well, and this is kind of an important discussion that I think that the committee, and we should probably kind of come to consensus now in terms of action items and goals. It's really clear that we want to discuss a priority for a shift in some way in management of open space and recreation areas from complete and total management by the DPW towards a Parks and Recreation Committee and or division, not committee, but department or division or some kind of staffed entity within the city structure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have consensus on that. Everybody has consensus.
Right.
So
Can we also get consensus that it should not be a committee, but it should be a department in and of itself, not falling as a division of public works, but a separate open space or separate parks and recreation division or department? Because I was frankly shocked that a city the size of Gloucester has all this under DPW.
Yeah, I mean, the lack of a Parks and Rec department does surprise a lot of people. It surprises me. It's a lot to stand up. And so, and I'm not saying, you know, hey, this is Earth, okay? Anything is possible. But what I want to try to understand from this group here and on as a style discussion about that goals and action items is, are we going to try to consolidate that in under a goal, or are we going similar to like the climate change and resiliency, where we're kind of putting that in a goal? And I've also sprinkled it in and out of the other goals. Or are we going to talk about a Parks and Recreation department throughout the entire thing?
This is Dave. I really think there should be a recreational park division under ComDev. And it shouldn't be under DPW. And it could be somehow coordinated with a sustainability, coordinator
Right.
with ComDev.
Okay.
But your point, Adrian, is where does it go in here?
I mean, I do think it lives in 3,
Uh-huh.
right?
Me
And
too.
it's something that maybe that I didn't include, right? So I have a maintenance plan. I want a facilities maintenance plan to point in the direction as a capital improvement need of the city that some entity be created, right?
Mhm.
And that it should also include programming and stewardship of facilities. But I'm not sure where it lives. And maybe it's here, maybe it's right here. Maybe this is where this lives, right?
Yeah.
I think 3, yeah, I mean, it's maintain, enhance, and expand. It's in goal 3. I mean, I think that's there. But like under what letter you mean? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, well, where do we put it under? I think, yeah, it does go under, it goes under 3 and it should be B, right? I'm gonna call it B, and then this again, I'll highlight it for formatting later.
One
Parks
word
and
of one word of caution on this point,
Yeah.
or just one consideration is that, yes, we want this, and I think there's consensus that we want this, but we don't want all or many of the goals and objectives contingent upon this.
Right.
I think in a difficult budget environment, taking on an organizational change, who knows whether the new administration and the council would have any appetite for that. And so I think somewhere in the text, perhaps it's not in this brief summary, but where we have more development, we talk about this this particular topic, this particular recommendation, and how it would be lead to more improvements and more fruitful development of open space. But that we still, absent that, these goals are still accessible. We still have a lot of things that we can do. Another thing to contemplate, and I have not done any homework on this point, but I was wondering, maybe Adrian, you can speak to this, is if we say that there needs to be a division under one of the departments for a Parks and Recreation, does it go without saying that there would also be budgetary accommodations made for it? New lines in the budget and some shuffling of appropriation that would support this group, and collaboration between this founding group and this, newly found group with the existing services of DPW, or is that getting too weedy and unnecessary?
Well, that's a really good, you make one very good point. You're absolutely right about, when I'm talking about the style here and how we kind of incorporate it into this goals and action items document. We definitely do not want to hang all of goal 3 on the development of some kind of Parks and Rec entity. Because one, it's an easy out, right? If it never happens.
Right.
And 2, I think that even if we were to put it here and it were to be the focus of the new administration and we were actually moving forward on a consistent path towards a Parks and Rec body entity inside of city government, it would take several years to roll that into place.
Yep.
So, that would be the very long range of this plan to try to achieve that goal. I mean, I would put that at like a 5-year mark, realistically, I think. At least 3. It would be at least 3 years of planning and budget coordination. On the subject of, developing that would require some fund to be created to service it. I will say typically Parks and Rec departments in other municipalities are self-funded on user fees for programming. And a whole lot of what they do and a whole lot of what they're able to do is dedicated to how much people are engaged with the local rec program. And a lot of it is actually kids after school programming, swim lessons, camps, and things like that. But that makes those facilities used and it makes them funded because they are collecting fees and then they're able to apply for grants and things like that for support. So, that's kind of a lot it would be a lot to set up for one, and, just standing up programming and getting people to go do it it does take time. So I would not anticipate, some kind of appropriation from the operating budget as it stands to start up a department. I think the department would have to start with some very limited offerings and support staff personnel in the beginning and then expand over time. That's how these things happen, right? So I'm going to talk to this point too, since we're on the subject right here, about who manages programming and facilities. There is a calendar for the rink. There is also a calendar for certain ball fields and other athletic facilities in the city. The fees and the calendar are managed between Mark Cole and Joe Lucido.
This is Dave. Can I go back to the discussion of a PNR division?
Yes.
I really think that we need to be a little proactive here. And I think, we're talking about goals, and it would be establishment of a PNR division under ComDev. Establishment rather than discussion.
Dave, I was thinking the same thing of needing a more active verb there.
I'm happy. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
As
that's
division within community development.
Which will happen first, your spelling or the PNR department?
Well, let me say this. It's not, I can spell. I said I couldn't spell. I can spell. I can't type. It's not a good typist. I'm a lefty. And, it's like scissors. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Not for my brain. It's for your brains. Lucky you. Anyways, okay. I'm happy to put that in here. I can also kind of add more about calendars and special events. fee schedules. I honestly think I would have to, take this back to my boss and be like, what would this look like?
Right,
And
yeah, like, let's not try to put an idea that certain parcels or properties or types of places would be under this, in this document right away, right? I mean, that's
right.
where we would go, is what the purview would be around this group, right? We don't know yet.
Yeah, and so I think I need to take this one back to my boss and say, if this were to be a recommendation of the Open Space Committee, what would be the most feasible thing that you think we could expand inside of our department to do? What would be the short-term goal, and what do you think is like the pie in the sky opportunity? And then also, the one thing I want to be careful about here is kind of trying to function as though we're the HR department by naming personnel positions and position types and, instructing how we think, because, we may have some idea of what we want a person in the city to do, but how that ends up, where that position ends up landing and who fills that position is not something that we have any ability to affect.
That's why it's a goal.
Right. Well, I want us to achieve our goals too, right? And so I want to be general enough that we can get the point across, but also not so specific that we miss the mark, right? Because in some places, so I like this idea of a division within ComDev. I don't know where they would, where that team would live in the annex, but whatever. I also know that in a lot of cities, a lot of municipalities, it's a whole freestanding department, right?
Right.
Why don't we just change the language a little bit to make it to like establish a PR division within the Department of Community Development, or a freestanding P&R department, something like that.
Why not just
And
say
is it-
establish a P&R division or department within the city of Gloucester,
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think we're promoting, right? We're not going to do the establishing. So should the beginning be like we're promote the establishment of a P&R department, something like that.
That's good.
That's what we're doing.
Okay.
We we don't have any actual influence in that sense, right? But we
Well,
can
we do have-
advocate and promote for these things.
We do have influence.
Yeah, and I would say that we should be involved in, if we're not I know that we're not HR, but also if we're spending time doing this, and I feel I would love it if when they were interviewing somebody for this position, they're like, who from the Open Space and Recreation Commission wants to be, or committee wants to be part of that? I don't know if that even happens, but I think that would be great.
I'd just like to make the point that there was a Parks and Recreation Committee similar to Open Space that was rolled into our responsibilities because it had become more or less moribund.
Right.
Just prior to the last Open Space plan.
That does happen. And there was a Parks and Rec department that was, I think, part of the DPW.
It
And
was
was
housed at the DPW for sure. It was, that's where it was. Yeah.
It was a division of the DPW, right?
There tends to be mission creep, and we don't want that to happen.
Right. And so that's why you're naming ComDev specifically, right? Because it keeps it out of the DPW.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to work on B. All right. I have to take this back around a little bit. I need to walk it around a little bit to try to figure out what the best way to describe it is that doesn't ruffle anybody, I guess. I mean, I know you guys probably don't care so much about ruffling.
Yeah, we don't care.
Adrian, I think we hear from the committee that we would like the establishment of a Parks and Recreation entity within city government. And if it doesn't land within community development, I think we would take it where we could get it. I think the baseline here is that having dedicated staff and resources to conduct the maintenance, and by having a dedicated budget line, it doesn't, I don't know how you all work, but and how much money can be shifted between activities, and and how fine scale things are. But it seems to me that if you have a designated budget line and a designated entity anywhere in the city, that stays within that, and it doesn't get shuffled off into other higher priorities of the sub organs.
Yeah, dedicated funds, right?
Right.
Okay. I'm going to leave this as it is here. Promote the establishment of Parks and Rec division within the Department of Community Development or elsewhere within the city. And then I'm going to add a couple more sentences about the Parks and Recreation would be responsible for setting fee schedules, collecting fees for funds dedicated to the management of facilities, managing special events calendars, promoting special events, etc. How does that sound? You guys don't have to watch me type and think at the same time. Okay.
That sounds good, Adrian. That's great.
A little painful, I know. Okay. And that was the O'Malley. Okay. That was a duplicate. Working our way down.
Adrian, I don't know if you got my.
Yeah, we got to your stuff.
Yeah, I don't get. I had something on D.
There it is. Hold
Does
on.
this include? Yeah, I'm just going to check my Word document real quick. Does this include the Green Street field? Well, what's going to become the new, Mados that's moved over or whatever, right? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Okay, so does this include the ball field?
It should, and I think that it makes perfectly good sense to include that, just because the development of that recreation area will not be complete before the implementation of this plan.
Right. And I don't know what we call it. I called it the new Green Street area, but I wasn't sure if it's taking on a different name or what that. They're just redoing Green Street, I guess.
I think it's still called Green Street.
Okay, it's all going to be called Green Street Field. They're just going to put lights in it and redo it, right?
Green Street, the Green Street field. I don't know what it is.
It feels to me like some of that's sort of already in place, and there's talk about ball fields already, and I just hope that there's time to take some of the output of all this work and influence some of the design of it, or at least incorporate the things that people care about. Right? I don't care, whether the field's on the left or the right, but the types of things that people care about in parks are included there.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the other comment was actually cut and pasted right from Courtney's. That he had an idea about this 10-year capital plan where you sort of look at it from a 10-year perspective and just think about it in that regards, budgetary wise, and I just sort of grabbed it from his and threw it in here.
Right. So that's similar to.
It might be, I figured it might be captured somewhere. It was easier just to throw it in.
Develop a facilities maintenance management plan, assess capital.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
And city recreation, track the progress of the investment. But I can certainly add some more of that language, because in fact, I'll just put it right in there and then we'll tighten it up a little bit, because that's very similar to above. This is the facilities maintenance, and then above we were talking about it to include, including, that was what Dave was talking about under, what did I call it here? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, we've gone by it, but there was also the comment about where we were going to incorporate bathrooms, land management plans.
Right, yeah.
Similar, this is a similar idea, right? So there's land management plan and facilities maintenance management plan.
And I don't know if he's mentioned 10 years, if that's just something that comes off, something he sees from other municipalities, or, why he picked 10 years. Is that just something that is in the templates, or is that a common practice? Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. So the open space and recreation plan and planners workbook is undergoing a major revision right now at the Department of Conservation Services, DCS. And so the Commonwealth is the planners workbook that we are using is from 1997, I think. And that calls for a 7-year open space and recreation plan. And what the Commonwealth, of course, has found is that like 7 years is not, it's too short. So they're moving at one of the recommendations and structural changes to the open space and recreation planners workbook is going to call for open space and recreation plans to exist over a 10-year trajectory. That's going to roll out probably after we are implementing this one, but our last open space and recreation plan went in 2011. This one is probably going to live to 2031, 2032 too. So they're all of the planning and improvement and management plans that we want to try to implement in the first couple of years of this set of action items and goals. They should all have a 10-year look. Right. Okay. Promoting alternative methods of reserving parking. This is over here. Enhance and protect Gloucester beaches for the changing diversity of users while prioritizing Gloucester residents' access. So this had a couple of different points. The following user groups have been identified as high priorities. Happy to make that change. Or we can change language to activities, the following activities. Have been ID. As
I'm wondering if investment is the appropriate word.
we could go to anything.
That's why I was just saying broadly accommodation would work there. High priorities for accommodation and possible investment.
Okay.
I don't know that you need much in the way of investment for birding, for example.
Right. Listen, if you're a birder, there are pretty serious investments that need to be made.
By the birders.
No, there are problems of access to some of the birding locations, but there's a very fixed, particularly Gloucester's important to birders in the winter time, interestingly, and we use the Elks Club and we use the top of Eastern Point, and there's no problem.
Right.
Maybe we should, lay the golden egg.
We should what?
Load the golden egg.
Oh, stop. Okay, so I think we answered those two. And then have a line in here about promoting alternative methods of reserving parking. And I know that, Liam, that was you, and I have no idea what that might look like. What are your thoughts on that? Tell me more. You're muted.
No, I do know that that was something that was talked about in the survey a bunch, and something that is brought up a lot when specifically with like the beach system. I don't know if that's under our purview or not, but I was just thinking about another way we could promote something that a lot of people want. And yeah, that was pretty much my thoughts on it.
Well, what would be an alternative way of reserving parking?
I know a lot of things have been floated about having some kind of electronic system or promoting just promoting an alternative system to the one we have right now.
There
Some
was-
system of reservations
Right.
and yeah. I think Dan, you brought it up at a different meeting when we were kind of brainstorming at one point.
Well, I don't know if I brought it up, but I think we did talk about it. And it was a big part of the mayoral and council campaigns. And it regarded the Cranes Beach model, where you use some online system to clear out the traffic by having out-of-towners buy their admission on a timed entry basis, and buying it remotely so that all they have to do is come in and scan a QCR thing, or something like that. It would just move cars along, and then residents would still have their ways of getting in as well.
Okay,
And I believe that Crane Beach does that currently.
Yes, with Ipswich residents having, access separate from the trustees and the visitors.
okay. Yeah, they have a separate lot at Cranes. Yeah,
Yeah, as do we. I mean, we have separate sections for residents. So.
in the lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Alternative methods of reserving parking
For non-resident.
for non-residents.
And I think we're talking about Good Harbor and Wingershik, and maybe Stage Fort, but I don't think we're talking about all of the beaches. I just wanted to make sure everyone else is agreed on that.
I'm gonna put that in there. And if that's how that's presented, then sure. Okay. All right, here we are into 4. And parking information, online maps. So Dan,
Yes.
take it away.
Oh, gosh, what did I say?
I'm gonna put you right in here.
Okay, I probably went on too long, out of proportion to the other goals, but I felt, slapping stuff in there would be easier to pare it away and to streamline it if necessary.
Oops, sorry, guys. That's not helpful. Hold on. So,
And we discussed most of this in the last meeting. Let's see, what did
so this is where we're at right now. I'm sure it's really hard to read for you guys at this point. So here,
Yeah,
this is
that's better.
where this begins. And I'm just going to point out here, there was something about Gloucester Crossing access. Somebody made that comment. And then Noel kind of said too ambitious, or rather too specific. It'd be great to make pedestrian bike access to Blackbourn Circle possible from Harrison Ave, et cetera, et cetera. Like to see I-4C2 become a pocket park. That's kind of down the way
Yeah.
of the
I think-
discussion about in 4. So, okay. So here we have promote cycling, walking, and other forms of self-propelled travel throughout the city by improving multimodal connections and wayfinding to provide safe travel. So,
Right.
I think that what you've included here, Dan, as a 4th is a perfectly, which I suppose it would actually be a 5th, on an annual basis, poll cyclists and pedestrians, file a list of safety concerns and consult with DPW, GPD, and other relevant departments to address them. Example safety issues at the time of this plan being drafted include. And then you have bulleted the following touch points for cyclists.
Yeah, and this actually includes the Blackburn piece in kind of broad language. establish and maintain rights of way for safe access to Blackburn Industrial Park, broadly described. That could be Harrison, it could be something else, with particular attention given to access from Gloucester Crossing. You know, how do you get across the circle?
Right, okay.
So Dan, what I don't know if you probably didn't get to mine yet on that, Adrian, but along those lines was not limiting it to just Blackburn Industrial Park, but the idea that within Blackburn Industrial Park, once you go down there, you get into Old Rockport Road and other access points to Dogtown and connection paths even further off into crossing the street into Southwood. So it wasn't just about connecting Gloucester Crossing to the industrial park, but also to other access points and open spaces in Dogtown. And originally we said Blackburn Industrial Park, but then I was thinking about it, I was like, it's not just about connecting the park to the crossing. The park, within the park area, there's also access points to Dogtown.
And I would agree with Mark. And I think what we agreed at the last meeting was to explore that possibility.
Yeah, explore ways, I forget what it says, like, we said something like explore ways to.
Connect Gloucester Crossing direct.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And Harrison Ave was just one little piece of it.
Yeah, it really does make sense to go downhill to go uphill.
Right. Which then you get to the uphill and it's just a single track path.
And I appreciate too, just considering that when we had this discussion earlier, I think it was more about connecting people that are working in Blackburn Industrial to get over to Gloucester Crossing, or Gloucester Crossing residents going to work and not needing or wanting to drive, but to include this notion of, oh, hey, I could get from my Halyard apartment to Dogtown without getting in my car.
Absolutely.
Would be really great. And I appreciate that.
Yep.
That's easy.
It's easy.
Yes.
Say more.
No, sorry, I'm thinking of from, yes.
Because I drove my car there after our last discussion last week, and I was trying to think outside the box. I was like, where and what and how? I have no idea. I don't know. I was trying and thinking.
It's probably gonna be one of those things that's deferred until they redo that whole circle somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
But certainly, what is easy is parking at the medical center, or, you know, various ways along in that parking area.
Right.
Right. But I think the idea is if you have a mountain bike and you just want to ride your bike over, you don't want to get into the car to go for, like, 2 minutes.
I think we need pedestrian bridges.
Yeah.
Whatever it gets to,
$12 million.
whatever it gets to, it won't be easy, but it
No.
won't be meaningful.
I know. And I was thinking of the, again, I was in I worked there, right? So I was thinking, how can we do this, right? And I thought pedestrian bridges, and I was like, well, that's how they carried the blades of the windmills up through that street, right? So the pedestrian bridge would have to be tall enough to remove or put another windmill up there or something.
Yeah,
Those kind of things, it's tough.
I think the underpass, I actually think the underpass has the most potential.
You
Yeah,
mean the railway underpass?
yeah, there is something, yeah.
Is a
Adrian, do you
bike
mean the-
route to,
Yeah, we don't have to solve it here, but we don't have to solve it here, but let's put good requirements up for it, right?
That's why explore.
but should we have in our purview also bicycle access to the YMCA, since it is such an important part of recreation and getting to it? I don't even know what back routes you take to bicycle, get up to Gloucester Crossing.
Green Street, right? You either go up Harrison and then walk, play Frogger and walk through the Rotary, or you go up Green Street and go through that little Green Street path near Marshall's.
And there's no parking there.
There are a couple of access points from Green Street and the neighborhood, I guess, further west, I think.
Trask, is it Trask?
It might be. I don't have the
Yeah,
map.
there's Trask and there's Green Street. There's two ways to make, kind of get there with bicycles.
Yeah. And through Bomco. So you can go Gloucester Ave and go to Bomco, and there's a little paved area that goes around, comes out on School, was it whatever the School Street is?
Sorry for asking, but should we get
Schoolhouse
back to the
Road.
question? Sorry for asking, should we get back to the question of, is this too detailed for our plan?
Well, so I think that this can replace complete bike lane designation on Rogers Street, right? Improve Scott Street bike lane designation, establish rights of way. Does that, I can delete that altogether because it looks like that's duplicitous now. You're muted, Dan.
That's taken care of in one of my bullets
Okay.
about the example
I mean,
problems.
I'm totally comfortable with wholesale scrapping what's up here. I just want to make sure we're covering it down here.
Right.
Because I think these were pretty specific.
Yeah. So
Can-
the
can-
second
but
bullet is adjust the bike lane or prohibit parking so that they don't overlap.
Right, okay, yeah. Okay, so identify, improve off-road and on-road connections to develop on-map bike lanes, bike safe streets, multi-use paths, off-street trails, and other cycling accommodations and services. That's different from what you've added here about safety concerns, right? Comply with the city's safe and accessible streets policy, collect and analyze information from the Gloucester Police Department regarding accidents involving cyclists and pedestrians, and develop better ideas for preventing them in the future. That seems like, and then convene an annual forum. So these two are kind of in this space, right?
Yes, yes,
But
they are.
not completely.
Yeah. Well, I think the second part of that, if you just stop after the safe and accessible streets policy period, the other stuff could come under the annual forum or and polling.
Over here.
Yeah, because the Safe Streets policy calls for DPW to say, here's our work plan, which is kind of the other side of things. What we want to have is a forum that precedes that says, here are some issues out in the city. Then DPW comes up with and has a public meeting that says, here is our work plan, and how do we accommodate all modes of transportation.
Right. Okay, so we're going to convene the forum before we poll, or we're going to poll first and then convene?
Oh, I don't know.
What do you want to do? Do you want to convene or poll?
I would convene. I think polling is, I mean, no, I think you need to invest in conversation and having the people in the room. And
Okay.
I agree.
That could end up in being your polling.
Yeah, I agree with that. Convene.
Okay. Review cycling pedestrian opportunities. Okay. And then on an annual basis, poll, compile a list, and consult with DPW, GPD, and other relevant departments, collect and analyze information.
You could probably, I think you could, these are both getting at the same thing.
Yeah.
I think if you just say convene an annual forum, the process for conducting that, because I think this would probably be in my hands or the committee's hands, the process for that could include polling, and it could be at our discretion to include it or not. So, but I would want to include data from crash reports and accident reports and anything we could get from DPW and the police to that end. So convene the annual forum with members of the public. Experts.
All right, it's a lot of words.
Oh, okay, so that bullet right, bullet 3 looks good.
Members of the public, experts from the DPW, GPD, and other relevant departments, as well as outside experts to review cycling and pedestrian issues and opportunities in the city to set priorities for improvements to safety, accommodation, and access. On an annual basis, poll cyclists and pedestrians to collect and analyze information from the Gloucester Police Department regarding accidents involving cyclists and pedestrians. And compile a list of safety concerns and consult with the DPW, TPD, and other relevant departments to address them, develop and vet ideas for preventing them in the future. Example safety issues at the time of this plan is being drafted include, and then bullets. Fine, works for me. What do you think, Dan?
Oh, can you go back down?
Scroll down.
I don't know. I want to see the stuff that's higher on the page.
Oh, okay, here you go.
Thank you. I never know which direction it is. Okay, on an annual basis. I think we have the first sentence is taken care of in the convening the annual forum. So I think you could start bullet number 4 or 5, whatever the next one is, with the word develop.
Right here.
And yeah, I think if you say
You want
develop
me to remove-
that ideas for improving safe cycling and safety for cyclists and pedestrians in the future or throughout the city. Example safety issues at the time of this plan.
So you remove this altogether?
I think so, because I think it's subsumed by the previous section.
Yeah, okay.
This
I'm gonna put
that
it here on the side just in case, because I think it's some good words. There's some
Okay.
good.
right, and this is going to take a little finesse.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Another one, incorporate parking information in the online maps and guides to open space and recreation lands. Identify and improve parking access. And then I'm going to add this. Here. It's a little bit of a single double, but we can reinforce anyways. All right, and then going back here to sustainability, Parks and Recreation, Director, Manager, what that looks like, that's kind of where it ends. And this can just be more of a personnel. What? Staff. Positions. For Andy. PR. And sustainable.
Should open space be part of that?
Parks and Recreation.
Staff positions for open space, parks and recreation?
Yep. I mean, I'm gonna have to go through and improve the language and make it a little bit more consistent and give us a cleaner bulleted copy, I think, to look at this point. Go ahead, Noel.
Yeah, I certainly think that it's important to separate DPW from the conservation areas. I mean, anything that's, I mean, it's, that's like saying there's no management at all in the open space, like Dogtown.
I mean, I think you're right. I do think you're right. It's definitely, there's a gap. Okay, so we'll reiterate it down there in climate change. Because we're going to talk about it in sort of the mechanics of operations up here. And then we're going to talk about it again in the mechanics of climate change and sustainability.
We just need to get the fox out of the hen house.
Yes,
What did you say?
We need to get the fox out of the hen house.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that was pretty good feedback from everybody. I'm really happy to see that for the most part, everybody's comfortable with what I put together. Thank you for your time reviewing it. We're going to go through one more review. But before we do that, I want to also on the agenda, I had set the date, a date included as an agenda item that we set a couple more dates to meet. I'm just gonna kind of throw this out there and let everybody know, next week is a full week, although there is a Conservation Commission meeting. The following week, the city offices are closed on Thursday and Friday, and then, which is the week of Christmas. And then they're closed again on Thursday and Friday, the week of New Year's. So there's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday available from on the 20th, 21st, 22nd, and also the 27th, 28th, 29th. And I'm kind of hoping that we can get together one more time before the end of the year with a final of this. And I don't know how all of you feel about maybe trying to do like, I don't know, Wednesday, the 29th after Christmas. So we all have like the bandwidth that we need to get through the holiday.
I can do that.
I can do that.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Yep.
sounds good.
Okay. 5:30.
Yeah, and is that a Wednesday or a Tuesday? It's Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday, the 29th.
Okay.
What's left to do then? How many more sections do we have?
Well, so this one, I want to get a final to you, and then there's a table that goes with it where we have to kind of, I'll fill in who the funding sources might be and the responsible parties, and I want you all to review that, but that stuff kind of is, it's pretty direct line. We will have to decide about what the timelines are for each of these things, how often, how long, how soon and how long we think we want to address it. And for your reference, in some communities, I have seen that table with, specific, this is the 1 to 3, this is the 3 to 5, this is the 5 to 10, or this is year 1, this is year 4, this is year 7 or whatever. And I've also seen some communities say short-term, medium-term, long-term. So as a group, you'll have to kind of decide how you want to scope it and define it. I don't have a really strong preference either way. I think that we're going to be describing this plan as a 7-year plan, and the actual implementation of it is likely to be 10 years. As we have seen, I mean, obviously it is so commonly the case that the DCS is simply just changing the scope of the plan for 10 years now going forward.
Then, yeah, short, medium, longer, fits a potential change in 7 to 10 that way. We don't have to be specific.
Right, and we can make a definition for each of those too, if that makes everybody feel comfortable or whatever. So, and then there are some that are ongoing,
Hold on. I'm sorry, I was muted earlier and we're downstream of it now, but I'm unsure if I can attend on the 29th.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. It's not that I can't. I don't know definitively that I can't. I'm just at this moment, I'm unsure of my availability.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Okay. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
So once we get those through those two. Hold on, let me. Let me get this for you all. We'll look at it again.
So you're going to send us a cleaned up version of what was gone through this evening?
Yeah, yeah.
Super.
Kind of need it to be clean at this point, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's getting to be very difficult. So in terms of sections, to answer your question, Mark, this is what we've been working on, goals and objectives, the 7-year action plan that it falls into. It's basically a reiteration of this language that we've covered. The public comment period, of course, is, this is a one-pager, a memo that and a list of entities that we're going to send this out to for comment. And we have already made most of that list. Thank you, Dan, earlier in the process. And then the community vision for open space and the analysis of needs typically waits for the goals and objectives to come together so that it can point to it and lead into it, right? And a lot of this is going to be carried over from the previous plan because it is simply language that hasn't changed. And it is often very much boilerplate language. So we'll see a draft of this. I am hopeful that MAPC is going to produce that portion once I am able to get them this finer version of goals and objectives and 7-year action plan. If they're not, I will move the copy myself and we'll take a look at that. The inventory of lands for conservation and recreation interest is something they're supposed to be working on as well. I do think I'm going to end up having a heavy hand in drafting that copy because we need to be able to describe the inventory that the city produced and how it is in fact different from the mapping inventory for the other less relevant map set that is part of the plan. So the plan, I don't know if you recall this or if you've looked at the 2011 open space plan, it includes an entire map set from MassGIS Oliver usually that shows the entire soil composition of the city of Gloucester and the agricultural value of the entire city of Gloucester and things like that. And that's discussed in the inventory because, we're talking about the geologic history of this wonderful rock that you all live on. But it's not speaking specifically to the parcel by parcel inventory that we undertook inside of the planning division last spring that actually looks to define it. So that is going to need to be described in a way that is readable for all of you and hopefully for all users in the future, because when the maps are produced, it will be pretty clear that there are two separate sets of map, and we're going to need to reconcile that really early on for the reader. I will tell you, we have asked if it's possible for MAPC to produce their map sets based on our inventory, and we have not gotten an affirmational answer yet. It would make it much nicer for us, but we don't know if that's going to happen. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Gemma because she went parcel by parcel and changed the shape files. We're reporting them back up to MassGIS to improve, and then we're going to send them to the Commonwealth. The state is going to sit on that data, that file set for probably 3 years before they roll it into Oliver, being really very realistic about this. So we're asking MAPC under their contract to work with an interim set of maps that we've produced that we know are right, but where their protocol is to always use the Oliver GIS maps is maybe going to be a bridge too far. I don't know yet. But
Adrian, I heard through the MA, website, the Conservation Commission, that Oliver was being discontinued.
Well, it's going to be upgraded.
I heard discontinued.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Oliver and Morris, I don't think are ever going to go away, but the expectation that the Commonwealth is going to always be maintaining is definitely changing.
Adrian, I'm sure it's a collaborative relationship with MAPC, but it's also contractual.
Mhm.
And the city is the client. So it seems that it is our document, and as the client, we could insist on whatever maps we want.
Thank you, Dan. I was gonna say the same thing.
Let me find out more about how that is being played. I kind of have been
Okay.
focusing on what I can change right now, you know,
Okay,
what I,
of course.
and then I can find out, because that's something I have to circle back on. And it was a conversation from about 6 months ago.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's try for 1 in January, because January is going to be a little bit of a tough month. I already know it. 5 and 19 will be a commission meeting. I believe the 20th will be Dogtown Preservation Commission. Wednesday the 12th is booked. There is a fourth Wednesday in January, the 26th. Everybody, can we hold that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna hold Wednesday, the 25th. If for some reason, yeah, I mean, and just being hopeful that we can get closer to a forum. I really want to get to a forum.
January the 26th, you said?
Yes,
Right, so that's the Wednesday.
yeah, the 27th will be, yeah.
So is it gonna be on the 26th or the 27th, the Wednesday or the Thursday?
Wednesday, 26th.
26th, okay.
Adrian,
Go ahead.
do you have a copy of the 2001 plan that was produced for the centennial?
You can send that to me. I don't have a copy of that. I mean, that may be around
It's-
somewhere in the.
It's very good.
Oh, great. I would love to see it.
I'll get it
Yes,
to you.
I helped compile that, so I think it is very good.
It is.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
My partner was upset because apparently there's some huge number. It describes a build out scenario. And we need to add some, I don't know, thousands of new houses. But it acknowledges the constraints as well.
Interesting. It's interesting how that conversation has evolved over the last 20 years or so.
Yeah.
Uniquely that plan, because it wasn't necessarily constrained by open meeting law, there was a great deal of citizen participation.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting and
Janice
inspiring,
DeLudo.
process.
Cool. Very cool. That's kind of, yeah, I'm curious. Please
Good
do.
language.
Please share. Please do. All right. So we have 2 on the books. I am hopeful that for the end of the month, I will have a clean version of this goals section, and also a clean version of actions for you. Over here, action plan, goals and objectives and action plan. So we can feel really good at the end of the year about 8 and 9. And then that can put me on a path back towards the contract to look for 5, 6, and 7 in time for the end of January, at which point we'll have a complete draft. How's that sound?
Good.
That sounds great.
And realistic.
Progress.
We're moving on. Okay, everyone.
Okay.
Heidi, you're
All right. I guess I just want to see if there's any other business or any other comments from members of the committee. Any other
So
matters? Yeah.
Our quote unquote homework, Adrian, you're gonna clean this up and then we're gonna review it. Is there anything else we need that we should be looking out for?
No, I'm gonna clean it up and I'll review it, and you will review it, and hopefully when I clean it up, I'm gonna put the table together for you so you can look at that too. But my hope really is at the end of the year, we're going to sit together and we're going to say, this is what we want. This is
Okay,
this,
cool.
you know, and it will be a pretty brief meeting because we have been through it now a couple of times.
And then it goes to the public for 30 days, or the public has access to it for comment, saying, we agree, we like it, what?
Yeah, well, so we will, here, I'm going to reopen this again. So you can
Yeah.
look at- So at the end of the year here on the 29th, when we meet, make sure I get my dates right. On the 29th, when we meet, my hope is that we're going to have 8 and 9 really squared away. And we're going to get together and we're going to say, yes, this is what we want for 8 and 9 on the 29th. And then I'm going to go back to the contract and say, where do we stand on 5, 6, and 7?
Mhm.
What's the turnaround on that? Do you need help with that? And if for some reason that all falls apart and I need to draft it, then I have a month to do it, to present to all of you for January 26th. And then at that point, we will have draft copy at a minimum, and they will be kind of in different stages of draft, but it will be one entire document to review. And everybody will have the opportunity to look at it, and then we can set a date for the forum. And at the forum, we'll be presenting this complete draft. And then immediately after the forum, you open up that 30-day public comment period. When we have the forum, we'll be inviting all these entities that we want to comment on it. So all of the boards, committees, and commissions, nonprofits, other city staff, agency departments, and things like that. I don't anticipate they'll all show up because they know they're going to be given access to a hard copy of it. And of course, the forum will probably be recorded because everything is now. So we may not have like a very big turnout to that event, but it will probably see a lot of exposure in that 30-day window, and hopefully a whole set of comments will come back. And then in that time, in addition, we will probably, as we have a clean draft in hand, submit it to DCS and get in line for their comments, which will take months to come back probably.
Okay. And then they'll approve it, that the state will approve it. Is that how
Well,
it
the
goes?
state comes back and the state says, we have these comments. We want you to get more information on this issue. We want you to prioritize this issue more. We want you to use this language a little bit differently, or whatever it is. And you know, I think I have a pretty good idea about what they're going to say, which is a good thing. But we have to wait for them to say it. They never let anybody slide by with like a, hey, great job.
Mhm.
So it will come back with those comments, and then this group will reconvene. It will probably be, you know, we're going to get the public comment cycle back and make changes pursuant to the public comment cycle a month or so after the forum, right? Maybe 6 weeks after the forum. We won't need to meet again between that because we'll have a full draft. And we'll make those revisions. And then when we have the comments back from the Commonwealth, we'll make those revisions. And that at that point, we have this final draft that we will take through to City Council. This committee will approve, City Council will approve it, the executive office will approve it, and then it is submitted to the state for incorporation. All of this hopefully done in time for the end of the fiscal year, which we
Okay.
should be able to do. I mean,
Great.
well,
That's helpful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know somebody that really wants a park grant that cannot be applied for without this plan in place. So
Yeah.
that's connected to this, and
Yeah.
that's okay. Now I have an idea, and I hope everybody else does too. So I also just want to say that there, you know, do we invite new city councilors,
Oh,
new
yeah.
mayor, or do we do that to just a regular meeting after they've been inaugurated on January 1st? Like for our January meeting, just as a courtesy, is that a good thing to do, or is that something I should do?
Invite them to the forum,
Okay,
right? because the way that the business is structured in our meetings, we are
Yeah.
so far down the road at this point. There would be a lot of questions to try to bring somebody new and in up to speed.
Great.
And, you know, there's tons of great background and documentation here to discuss, to review this process, right?
Sure. Yep. Great. Any other comments or questions from members of the committee?
No,
Okay.
move we adjourn.
Okay.
second.
All right. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate
Thank
seeing
you.
your faces and
Yeah.
stay healthy. Good work. Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you, Adrian. Good night.
Thank you, Adrian.
Okay.
Hold on.
See you soon.
Great.
Bye, Noel.
Bye-bye.